What is up, everybody? Gone Lead here, bringing you some of the Division beta, and this is the closed beta, no less, too. As it turns out, this game has actually been in development for a very, very long time, and my God, have I been looking forward to it since, what was it, 2013, I think it was, when the original announcement trailer was announced. The fact that this game is finally getting close to launch has me ecstatic and fucking excited to really play this game. It's come a long way, I'll admit, from when it was first announced, and I will admit, seeing this and comparing it to what was promised back in 2013. I don't know, I want to say that it has me a little bit nervous, but at that same time a little bit excited for the future. It's very, very hard to say, and it's very, very hard to pretty much define what I'd say this game to be. But nevertheless, I will at least give you guys my own first impressions of the game and what I thought of it in terms of this beta. Now granted, once again, this is a closed beta that you are watching here, so there are a lot of what can I say, inconsistencies compared to what's going to be in the final game. So I'd say take it with a grain of salt, and maybe wait to see if I provide a review on the final product of the game when it launches, because I will be getting the gold edition, which comes with the season pass, the core game, and a shit ton of additional content as well. So I'm definitely looking forward to getting that. So, but anyways, what we're looking at here is pretty much what the single player is going to be. It includes a squad-based drop-in, drop-out co-op mode, which you are seeing my friend and I play here. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and granted, we have been kind of grinding on this mission too, considering the fact that this is the only story mission that was featured in the beta. Now, yeah, I will admit, this was kind of a little morsel for the final game itself, and there are signs of the story as well all throughout New York City, which is where this game takes place. So, believe me, there is definitely a lot to be explored here, and in terms of that, there's a lot more to come regarding that. But otherwise, though, yeah, the Ubisoft have made it clear that this game, their bread and butter with it, is going to be the story mode in question and its single player and co-op aspects. They mentioned that that's going to be where the bread and butter of this game is. Now, at that same time, do I think that's going to be strictly what it is? No, not at all. I kind of think that this game is going to be it's going to be played more on a PvP aspect, which I'll go over here in just a little bit, but otherwise, this game as a whole, it's very, very good for a squad-based shooter. Cover system is nice, animations are great, and on top of that too, the game looks amazing. Even though this is a beta with a good chunk of its content cut out, it's still really, really nice. It really is. Now, still following with the same single-player aspect of the game, single-player co-op aspect, the game itself does actually lend itself to having a lot of out-of-combat content, or I guess maybe it wouldn't be considered out-of-combat context, but nevertheless, there's a lot of additional things that you can do with the single-player game and the co-op game itself. What you're seeing here is actually more along the lines of the inventory and weapon modding systems, which, to be honest, it plays out a lot like, what was it, Future Soldier's weapon mod system? It was really, really cool how that worked, but granted, it isn't the same way where like you can see the entire gun on an exploded view, things like that. No, if I'm honest, that was freaking awesome in that game. In fact, it was an amazing mechanic as well. Very groundbreaking, to say the least. Now, I will admit, you guys might have seen that my AK in the previous clip was blue. That's actually part of the skin mod that you're seeing there for the weapon mods. That clip for the single-player campaign mission, that was actually done a little bit before I started recording, or a little bit after I did this whole section of the video that you're seeing here. So I do admit it is a little bit out of sync, but who's keeping score, you know? Nevertheless, though, weapon modding is plenty good. You can get plenty of different mods just by scavenging out in the single player or even in the dark zone, which I'll go over in a little bit. And then, of course, you've also got the RPG aspect of the game as well. You've got different skills pertaining to different roles that you can play. What you're seeing here is my adjusting of my skills, trying to debate on what I should go with, since my friend, as you can see in the lower right-hand corner, is still connected to me at this time. And of course, here's also the map as well. That I always thought was the coolest part for the map as well. Just seeing that pop up and you're actually standing right there on the map. It's freaking amazing. That. Anyways, though, yeah. The whole idea behind the home base that you're seeing here is that it's kind of your, well, as the name implies, a home base. You can set up everything here, upgrade everything in terms of your base locations. You got your crafting station there, stash, and of course, as you progress through the story mode, you can upgrade more and more of the home base to give you some mods for your skills. Now, one of the additional bread and butters behind this game is the exploring part, which I find to be one of the most fun, and I don't want to say most rewarding, because I'd be kind of lying in that respect pertaining to the exploring, because most of the things that you find is primarily ammunition, med kits, food items, things like that. It isn't a lot to run off of, but depending on where you look, you can occasionally find like weapon crates and such. And granted, I will admit this beta has only a small section available to us to play with. There's still plenty to scavenge around, and a good number of the buildings are traversable, like you'll see here in just a little bit. And there's the emoticons there, which I'll go over in detail here in just a little bit. But otherwise, though, the buildings themselves do have a lot to offer, and especially when you're in the PvP aspect of the game, these can actually work as some very good hidey holes, especially when it comes to like setting up ambushes and things like that. It's very nice to do, and there's a lot of detail with regards to the buildings themselves, where items are located, how it's all laid out, various things like that. And from what I've heard too, the detail with regards to New York City, like say street placement, store location, various things like that, are also very well detailed in their location too. It's very cool. I really appreciate it when developers go that extra mile to ensure that everything is as authentic as possible, just revisualized to suit the game's criteria. Watch Dogs was another one of those games that did that to a T, and it was freaking amazing for that. And here's one of those weapon crates that I mentioned as well. Like I said, depending on where you look, you can occasionally find these. Usually on side missions, you can find them behind like where an enemy is hiding out at. So, like I said, it all kind of varies on where you look. Otherwise, most of it is just primarily, well, supplies. That's about it.
Morning.
So one of my biggest beefs with this game has to be the NPC encounters. I guess it's safe to say that they are in the game, and while yes, Ubisoft and the developers have made it clear that co-op encounters are one of the biggest points of this game, I feel like as if there aren't many of them here. And even then too, for the encounters that you do find, they're kind of bullet sponges. It reminds me a little bit of Borderlands, especially when you're first starting out, because that's when enemies were definitely bullet sponges. And in this case, headshots are what count more, especially against armored targets like what we just faced against there. But otherwise, though, that's my biggest concern with this game, is that it's just too sparse. Usually just walking around hoping to find something half the time, unless we know where to look. But nevertheless, there are still some decent encounters, which can lead to some pretty decent firefights depending on where you are. Now, while we're on the subject of the story and the single-player mode in question, you may have, for those of you that have played the closed beta, you may have noticed this entire area coming up here on the right-hand side and the left-hand side as well. Initially, I sort of threw this off as just being scenery. I literally did. I didn't know what to expect until my friend pointed this out in terms of it being burn pits. And that's kind of when it hit me. So, there's not a whole lot known about the story mode itself, aside from the fact that it pertains to something known as a Operation Dark Winter or something like that, which was announced during the original announcement trailer back in 2013. You guys can do some Google searching on that, but that's just from what I understand. And there's a little bit of a backstory about it. I'm not too certain on the specifics, though. And once again, this is another example of the exploration in question for the Division. There's a lot of ground to cover, and a lot of it does actually go all over the place, too. It's very, very surprising just how detailed this is. And I will be honest, this entire subway, or, well, not subway, this entire sewer system took, what, the better part of about 10 minutes just to traverse? I think it might be an exaggeration, but it was part of the reason why is because my friend here was just taking a sweet time getting ready. He was doing something, I forget what it was at the time, but nevertheless, he just kind of stood here for a little bit, and then he just decided to leave. But nevertheless, there's a lot to this game, and I mean a lot to it. I really do appreciate the level of detail that they went through, even in the beta too, in terms of the amount of content that there was. Granted, though, like I said, the lack of NPC encounters does actually make this kind of boring to a certain extent, but nevertheless, the exploration is still quite interesting. You never know what you can find down here, and we did find some supplies down here in the sewers as well, which was quite surprising considering how unsanitary it is down there. Still, these can really end up turning out to be almost anything, really. And while yes, I do feel like as if that the developers are holding something back from the final game in terms of what we've seen in the beta, there's still something to be had with regards to this exploration. Maybe some more NPC encounters, something. It just feels too slow, too boring, especially in the single player mode. Single player mode, you expect yourself to be challenged a lot. You expect to have lots of enemies, lots of targets, you know, something. But it's just very surprising that nothing really came up at all. So when we did finally make it out of the sewers, as you can hear, there's gunfire going on. My friend came up first and started engaging these NPCs, who are surprisingly enough known as the Cleaners. Why they're known as that, I can only assume that the flamethrowers have to do with it, but nevertheless, there was kind of a little bit of an exchange of gunfire there, but for the most part, that ended pretty quickly. It was just two guys, and that's it. Still, what came up afterwards, though, we ended up stumbling across this shortly after, and, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, NPCs. They do actually add atmosphere to the game. They really, really do. It's nice, because this way, the city still feels alive, at least in the single-player and co-op mode.
Beacon detected.
And this is that thing that we stumbled across, too. This is known as an echo beacon, which is actually a very unique way of telling the history of the game in terms of being able to explore around, see what was going on, see like information about different characters that were participating in these events, various things like that. It's very, very cool, and it's a nice, unique way to actually see the story unfold, especially the backstory itself. Granted, there's still images, so they're not like cutscenes, but it's a nice alternative at least. And it does actually add a bit more to the story in terms of its immersion, because this way you can figure out what happened to each person, what happened in terms of the events. Like, say for instance, this event here. This is actually pertaining to a riot that had occurred shortly after the biological weapon had gone off, or whatever had gone off here in New York City. Because of that, we were sort of like exploring, figuring out what had happened, listening to the audio messages, various things like that. And of course, as you're seeing over here too, that guy that you saw over there on the left-hand side, you can also tell like when there's a suspicious individual that looks like as if they should be known in the story in terms of like what's going on, you know, things like that. It's very, very cool, and I do appreciate that sort of way of storytelling, because it's nice and unique. It gives a new method to the storytelling of the game, and this one I've never seen before. So it's an impressive little mechanic, and I do quite like it. Now comes to the moment that we all expected the Division to actually play a lot like DayZ, and the fact that you get killed as soon as you come out. And that is the Dark Zone. The Dark Zone in question is pretty much an area where your character's onboard AI, the Isaac there that you keep seeing that's talking on the bottom, supposedly he can't get any transmissions out. I don't know much about the Dark Zone or how it applies, but the fact that I wasn't shot when I stepped out was actually a very nice thing, so I'm not complaining there. Nevertheless, we had some my two friends and I were having some issues trying to get into the same session, so we had to take some time to get that done. We're not too certain in terms of how that happens or why it happens. I told them that I was thinking it was because of the campaign level, but they were saying it wasn't. Now, why it was a good thing that we weren't being shot as soon as we came out is because of a special status known as going rogue. See that little red skull there? That is actually a rogue player. Now, I do admit the view distance for rogue players is a little bit extreme, but the key thing regarding about going rogue is that when you do it, you're kind of telling everyone, "Hey, come and shoot me because you'll get a small bonus if you do." That's pretty much what going rogue does. It pretty much sets a big fucking target on your head and invites everyone to shoot you, because when they do, they get a small bonus that they get for doing so in question. Plus, in terms of going rogue, as you can see, you're easy to track. And back towards the end of the beta, my two friends and I were having a little bit of a moment where we just went ham on a couple of players, and suddenly we had every single player in the server just bearing down on us. It was fun, but I didn't get any recordings of it just because, well, we were having a hard time, so it kind of annoyed us to a certain degree. Now, when you play the Division enough, you'll hear a lot about people mentioning about stuff that they get in the Dark Zone. The Dark Zone in question is kind of where you get the best shit in the game. And granted, I do admit the developers are kind of pushing you to play the PvP aspect of the game, and I do respect that too. Don't get me wrong. I do respect the fact that they're trying to get people to branch out to play additional parts of the game. I personally find that to get the best shit in the game, it shouldn't be just restricted to PvP only. Having the ability to have access to it in the single-player mode would be nice as well, so I do suspect that little fact may change in the near future. Nevertheless, you can still get quite a lot of good stuff, especially when you explore around. That crate that you just saw that I walked past, that is actually a supply crate, which for whatever reason, my friends and I could not seem to get open. Nevertheless, some of the gear that you can get includes like attachments, vanity items as well, such as say new outfit items, which at the end of the beta it seemed like all we were really interested in, and as well as newer weapons and such. So when you do explore the Dark Zone, there's a lot to be able to gain. The only issue comes, though, with regards to the NPC encounters. I find that there's not enough NPCs, aside from that guy right up there. It all kind of varies based on where you go. There's a bunch of landmarks throughout the Dark Zone that you can travel to, and usually these landmarks have NPCs in them, but it would be nice to have a lot more encounters outside of those landmarks. Give us reason to just sort of hunt around and look for new gear. It all kind of varies from time to time based on where you go, but nevertheless, there's still a lot to be had in exploration. It's just a matter of simply looking around, really. Now, one thing you guys might have noticed from time to time, especially just as of recent as well, with this recent clip that just came up, you guys might have noticed that there is a little yellow pack that I have on my back. Items that you get in the Dark Zone, you cannot take out the same way that you came in. This in mind, you actually have to do what's known as extracting your equipment before you can actually get away with the stuff in question. Extracting them gives you the ability to have access to them pretty much after you leave the Dark Zone. The only issue is that when you extract, you're pretty much sending up a flare in the air, in which case everyone in the server can see when you're extracting. So it's a bit of a risk to do it, and the fact that the beta only had like 3 extraction zones was a little bit of a risk nonetheless. And granted, I didn't have much at all. If I'd have died, I wouldn't really be losing much, but still, I mean, I prefer to have something more than nothing. Every little bit counts, I find. So, but yeah, when you do start an extraction, everyone knows about it. They'll start hunting for you at times. What I find funny, especially when I first started playing the game, is that everyone would just sort of take aim at you. There'd be a lot of distrust, but they would never shoot at you right away. And this is one of those instances. This is a PvP section of the game, and no one's shooting. I find that the most funny thing in the world. Now, what happened here with regards to this extraction was that when the helicopter came in, you'll see it here. Helicopter comes in, lowers the rope, we try to run up to it, start extracting our stuff, and then someone starts firing on us. This is pretty much what happened. When someone starts firing on you as you're trying to get away with your stuff, it pretty much cancels out the extraction or extends its time. And needless to say, that is the most annoying thing in the world. Of course, I ended up getting down, but thankfully I didn't die. Thank God for my friend there. Nevertheless, the extraction process is a little annoying to say the least, and we were kind of stuck, unable to get our stuff out until we ended up deciding to turn tail and run, which ended up with my friends getting killed and me getting away scot-free. It took me about two attempts to actually attempt an extraction before I was actually able to do it. And right there, my friend ended up going down, and that was like the last time I was able to revive him, at least that I remember. Nevertheless, this is another one of those instances where going rogue can be a bit of a bad thing. Because I mean, this way everyone knows where you're at. They can pretty much kill you on sight. You don't even have to do anything. Just sit in a place that you want to go to, camp, and just start firing away, wailing on people. It's a bit annoying to say the least, because people can be assholes. But at that same time, it can be rather fun because you do get some decent rewards out of it and plenty of extra credits for killing people that are already marked. So it has its own perks and downsides. Now, while we're on the subject of extraction zones, this is one of those instances where pretty much all the players can use a single extraction helicopter to get their stuff out. And it's quite nice in that regard too, because once again it kind of reinforces that sense of, well, cooperation, really. Granted though, it's still one of those instances like before with the first extraction that failed, where players can just pretty much ambush you without any rhyme or reason. Now, one thing you guys will notice is that those two players that just passed us, we had just engaged in taking out a number of NPCs in this area, which is the reason why you're seeing some bodies laying around. The biggest thing to note about them is that if they are non-hostile, usually they're not going to shoot at you. In which case, in this case, you just turn around and sunset the flare for the extraction. But prior to this, we did kill one player that was that had actually been known for killing other players mindlessly, just shooting them on sight, all for nothing. And in this instance, when we sent up the flare, a number of other players started showing up around us as well, but we kind of just took up a defensive position and tried our best in terms of tracking where they were. And needless to say, it went off without a hitch. And the one guy that's been known for I don't want to say team killing, but for killing other players, that was him right there. We had killed him a collective of maybe, what, 3 or 4 times? And he spotted us too as well, just as he ran past. At least I think he spotted Streak over there. And when he spotted him, he didn't even bother about shooting. He just turned tail and run. And that's kind of what one thing that makes the game nice and bad both at one time, is that when you have a group of players that go rogue or rogue up, as some people are dubbing it, that team, if they're well coordinated, can pretty much be a one-team killing squad, and that can also be very, very annoying, to say the least, because then you pretty much lose all of your Dark Zone money and ranking in a short amount of time. Now, when this helicopter arrived, this is primarily when that extraction moment came in, and I was finally able to get my stuff out of there too. When we got him out, you see that guy right there, the unmarked agent. Well, I forget if it was him or another person that decided to go ahead and use. Oh no, wait, nope, there they are. Those two guys, they were actually placing their gear on my helicopter, and then after that, my helicopter left, and I got my fair share. Pretty much the stuff that I got myself. And that's the beautiful thing about it, is because the extraction zones are universal. If other players decide, oh, I'm gonna go and use this extraction chopper as a diversion, they definitely can. Which, believe me, that's when things get really annoying, because then you can lose all of your stuff that way. But after that, we kind of just called it quits. Went back to home base and called it at that. Which, to be honest, the transition between Dark Zone and regular area, and vice versa, it's seamless. You can be in and out and not have a single loading screen. It's definitely nice. Or maybe it just went back out. But nevertheless, that kind of covers everything that I found was actually the good, the bad, and the ugly for the game itself. Like I said, first look, I have to admit this game definitely has piqued my interest, and I really cannot wait to actually play more of this when it launches on, I think it was it March 8th, if memory serves? Yeah, I think so. March 8th is when this game comes out. Closed beta has just passed at the time of my making this, but there is rumor that there is an open beta coming out here very, very soon. I don't have the details on it, so I would suggest keeping an eye out on the Division website for more information. But otherwise, though, like I said, that kind of covers my coverage of the or my preview of the Division closed beta. Let me know what you guys think. What you guys think would needs to be tweaked. What you guys think needs to be adjusted or needs to be removed or added to the game. Because believe me, this is a fairly expansive little game. But at that same time, I feel like as if the developers are hiding something deliberately. So, who knows what's going to happen? You never know. Something new may come in at the very end that leads to us getting something new or epic or what have you. So, I say keep an eye out. Maybe check out what some reviewers or critics are saying. You never really know. But otherwise, though, thanks again, guys, so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to click the like button down below to let me know. And if you have any other comments or any suggestions for future games, granted it'll have to be after my Halo 5 videos, then feel free to go mention that in the comments down below, and I'll take a look at them and see if I can try to figure out what I can do for there. Otherwise, though, guys, thanks you guys for watching, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Bye bye.